This is lesson 2-1 from the Algebra Readiness textbook. For today's lesson, you will need a sharpened pencil and your note packet. Pause the video to gather your things and then press continue. Today's learning targets are to be able to identify the properties of numbers and to use properties to help us solve math problems. Many of you have watched your parents be able to solve math problems quickly and efficiently in their heads, only to be wondering, how do they do that? And the way that they do it is that your parents are using some various properties in mathematics that they may or may not actually know the name of the property, but they know that these maneuvers in mathematics are allowed. And so today we're going to name these properties for you so that you too can get really efficient in doing math in your head. The first property has to do with changing the order of the numbers. So in this example, the sum of 6 and 4 is the same as the sum of 4 and 6, as written in red. So if we solve this, 6 plus 4, sure enough, that's 10. And 4 plus 6, sure enough, that's 10. Because this is true of every number, regardless of if the number is positive or negative, if it's a decimal or a fraction, this holds true. Since this holds true, we call that a property. It holds true not just in addition, but also in multiplication. 9 times 5 is 45, and 5 times 9 is also 45. I will get the same product, regardless of the order. This property has a name. The name is the commutative property. This is what you should write in your notes. Changing the order of the numbers you are adding or multiplying does not change the sum or the product. Also write an example down in your notes, like 3 times 7 is 21, 7 times 3 is 21, 3 plus 8 is 11, and 8 plus 3 is 11. Pause the video to get that written down, and then press continue. Okay, before we move on from here, I want to talk about how a mnemonic device for how you could remember the commutative property. The commutative property, some people like to remember the word commute. To commute means to move, it means to drive from your place of residence, where you live, from your home, to your work. So you're really changing your position as a person. First you were at home, now you are at work. So when you commute, you are moving or changing position. And really, that is what the commutative property is. You're changing the position of the numbers. If that helps you, please write that down. The commutative property is to change the position of the numbers. But again, it only works for adding and multiplying. The next property we're going to talk about talks about changing the grouping of the values. For example, if I take 2 plus 7 plus 3, and I have the parentheses grouping the 2 and the 7, that would mean 9 plus 3, or 12. If I change the grouping, and so instead of grouping 2 and 7, I'm now grouping the 7 and the 3, you can see that to solve this, I would have to take 7 plus 3 and get 10, and then add the 2, and I still get 12. You can change the grouping only when all of the operations are adding, or in this purple example, if all of the operations in the problem are multiplying. When all of them are the same, you can change what's being grouped before you add or multiply them. In the second example, 9 times 4 is 36, and then 36 times 5 leaves me with 180. On the right-hand side of the equal sign, 4 times 5 is 20, 20 times 9 is also 180. I could only use that property because the only operation in the purple is multiplication. So what is the name of that property? Time to write in our notes. It's called the associative property. And again, it only works for addition and multiplication. In your notes, write Changing the grouping of the numbers using parentheses, you are adding or multiplying, does not change the sum or the product. Then let's also put an example in. Those two examples we just wrote down would be good ones. And we found that this equals 12 and this equals 12. This side equals 180 and this side equals 180. Pause the video, get that written down, and come on back. Okay, so you've got this written in your notes. Now let's talk about a mnemonic device to remember the associative property. When you associate with people, you are grouping together. It's who you talk to. Who you associate with is who you spend time with. Think of yourself at the cafeteria. When you're in the cafeteria, you are associating or grouping up with your friends. So if you're changing who you're grouping with, that is how you can remember that the associative property changes what's in the grouping signs. Changes what's in the grouping. Now notice the numbers 2, 7, 3 did not change order. 2, 7, 3. Again, 9, 4, 5. 9, 4, 5. The numbers stayed in the same order. Only the grouping symbol, only what was in the grouping symbol changed. If the numbers had changed orders, that would be the commutative property. That's the previous one we talked about. All right, let's put this to work. Carlos rented a set of golf clubs for $7 and a golf cart for $12. He paid green fees of $23. Find his total cost. Now, some of you initially would want to follow the order of operations and add from left to right. But since all three of these numbers are being added and there are no other operations, I can implement some of the properties that I just learned. This would be easier to add in my head if I would switch around the 12 and the 23. Changing the order is the commutative property. So I'm going to rewrite this as 7 plus 13 plus 12. Then I can group together 7 plus 3 and I get 20. So as soon as I group it, that's the associative property. 20 plus 12 is easier to add than 19 plus 23. And so I would be able to add that in my head and get $32. Okay, now you try the next one. You spend $6 for dinner, $8 for a movie, and $4 on popcorn. Find your total cost. Explain which property or properties you used. So this is our given problem. I'm going to explain it this way because it's a little easier. Now, if I were doing this in my head, I probably would not take 6 plus 8 first. I would probably switch the order and say 8 plus 6 plus 4. That is the commutative property because I switched the order. Then instead of taking 8 plus 6, I'm going to take 6 plus 4. You're always trying to make a 10, a 20, a 30, a 40, a 50, because those are easy to add or subtract or compute with. 6 plus 4 is 10 plus 8. And so that was the associative property that allowed me to group those other ones together, 6 plus 4, before I did 8 plus 6. And then I'm going to add, and I get 18. And don't forget your label. All right, another property. The identity property says that when I multiply a number by this, I'll get the identical number as the beginning number. So what could I put in this space? 5 times blank equals 5. So that my answer is the same as what I started with. Many of you already know that the answer is 1. 5 times 1 equals 5. 12 times 1 is 12. 15 times 1 is 15. anytime I multiply by 1, I get the identical answer as the beginning number. There is also an identity property of addition. What is the magic number that when I add that, I end up with an answer that is identical to the beginning number? Many of you already know that the answer is 0. 3 plus 0 is 3. So my solution is identical to my beginning number. Let's put that down in our notes. The identity property of addition and multiplication. The sum of any number and 0 is the original number. And our example is 3 plus 0 equals 3. The product, remember product is the answer to a multiplication problem. The product of any number and 1 is the original number. And so our example could be 5 times 1 equals 5. So how can you remember the identity property? Identity. The answer is identical to the other number. So if that mnemonic device helps you, write it down. If you don't have all these notes down, pause the video and then continue when you are ready. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do here is name each property. Try to do these on your own. So pause the video, try to do them on your own, and then come on back and compare what you get to what I have. All right, the first one, I have 5 times 7 equals 7 times 5. The only difference is that I have switched the order. When you switch the order of the numbers, that's the commutative property of, and then you name the sign of multiplication. Letter B, C times 1 equals C. It looks like my answer is identical to the other number. That is the identity property. And then name the operation of multiplication. Letter C, 7 plus A equals A plus 7. Well, we learned that A is a variable and A represents an unknown number. So 7 plus a number, and then I switch the order here. Switching the order indicates the commutative property of, and this time I'm going to name addition. Good. So remember, commutative property, switch order. The next one, letter D, 5 times x times y equals 5 times x times y. Notice I did not switch the order, 5xy, 5xy. So I know it's not the commutative property. Those three numbers are being multiplied together, but I'm changing what numbers are in the parentheses. When you change grouping, that is the associative property. And then name the operation of multiplication. And so that one, as a reminder, switches the grouping, but not the order. Okay. Pause the video, try these three on your own. Okay, this one is clearly switching the order, so you should have said the commutative property of addition. This one is the identity property because I'm multiplying by 1 and my solution is the same as the other number. So this would be identity property, of, and then name the operation of multiplication. And letter C, 3 times z times m, 3 times z times m. The numbers are in the exact same order. I just changed what was in the parentheses. So this would be the associative property. Careful when you're shortening the associative property. Associative property of multiplication. All right, let's keep going, folks. Now we're going to put that to work using mental math. 81 plus 6 plus 9. 81 plus 6 plus 9 is not my favorite way to solve this. I would really like it if instead the 6 and the 9 would switch places. That's the commutative property. So the first thing I'm going to do is write 81 plus 9 plus 6. And how did I get that? I used the commutative property of addition. And then I'm going to group 81 and 9 together. And so I'm going to get 81 plus 9 is 90 plus 6. And how did I get there? I used the associative property to change the grouping. Associative property of addition. And I get 96. Good job. Okay, pause the video, try these 4, and then come on back. We're going to use mental math. All right, for this first one, 6 plus 7 plus 14, I see that this would be nicer to make a 10. So, and actually this time it would be a 20. So when I say make a 10, I mean a 10, a 20, a 30, a 40, a 50, a 60, a 70, in order to make something easy to add or multiply. So I noticed that if I took 14 plus 6 plus 7, that would make it easier because now I can use the associative property and group together 14 plus 6, 20 plus 7 is 27. Okay, the next one, 8 plus 0 plus 2 plus negative 7. Well, I noticed that 8 plus 0 is the associative property, is the identity property of addition. And so the first thing that I would do is add these all together. 8 plus 2 makes a 10, plus 0, and I get 10. 10 plus negative 7 is 3. If you wrote down the properties, that's awesome. I'm really happy about that. I just don't have enough room. The next one, 5 plus 12 plus 18 plus 5. Again, I'm looking to group together something that would make a 10, a 20, a 30. And so I want to rearrange using the commutative property. I'm going to rearrange my numbers. So I'm going to scooch that 5 over by the other 5 and get 5 plus 5. And then I end up with 12 plus 8. So I want to group these together. And so that would be the grouping part is the associative property. And I get 10 plus 30, which equals 40, making it much easier to do the math in my head. Okay, the next or the last one. If I could change the order, that's the commutative property, and switch these around, I then would have 19 plus 21 plus negative 30. That's the commutative property. Now the associative property allows me to group together 19 plus 21 first to get me a 40. See how it's easy to add 40 plus negative 30, and I get positive 10. All right, hopefully you're starting to see how to put into place the commutative property, the associative property, and the identity property. Now let's pretend like we are now your parents and we're going shopping for school supplies. The school supplies needed are shown at the left. I have a a highlighter for 85 cents, an eraser for 35 cents, and a pack of graph paper for $1.65. So when I put that together, I originally have this, but that's not really the best way to add these together. In fact, it would be much easier for me to change the order so that I am grouping. Now, I wrote this kind of silly because I can't show you the parentheses, but I am showing you that I'm grouping these two together first. That's the associative property. I get $2. See how it made a whole number? $2 plus 85 cents leaves me with $2.85. Now I'm able to do that in my head. All right, pause the video, try this one on your own. Change the grouping or the order of these numbers, group them together in a friendly manner, and tell me what my total is at the bottom of that receipt. Okay, at the supermarket, we end up with $1.80 plus $2.20 plus $2.30. Hopefully, everybody went and looked, when you were looking at this, noticed that if I grouped together $1.80 and $2.20, it made me with $4. Left me with $4. That's an even round number. $4 plus $2.30 is $6.30. Now, name the property shown. Look at this. Instead of them using numbers, they're using symbols. So if I have a diamond plus a dot, and it equals a dot plus a diamond, all I did was switch the order around. Which property means change order? So I noticed it changed the order. Which property changes the order? Commutative property of addition. Okay, the next one, number 2. This one, I am not changing the order. I have a square, a triangle, and a dot. A square, a diamond. I'm sorry, did I say a triangle? A square, a diamond, a dot. A square, a diamond, a dot. The only thing that changed was first the diamond and the dot were in parentheses, and now the square and the diamond are in the parentheses. When I change the grouping, that is the associative property. And then of multiplication. Next, which two numbers would you combine first? Explain. Hopefully when you look at this, you think you would combine 5 and 95 first. Why? Because it makes in this case, it makes 100, which is easy to add or is easy to add. Then you can take 100 plus 36. Okay, what about number 4? Hopefully you would say that you would combine 2 times 5 first. Why? Because it makes 10. And 10 is easy to multiply by. Okay, the last example. Use mental math. Pause the video, make sure you can do this. If you cannot do this problem, you need to come into a morning meeting or get some extra help. Okay, let's check this one over. Hopefully you rearrange this to be 4 times 5 times 9. 4 times 5 is 20 times 9. 20 times 9 gives me 180. This one right here, when I changed the order, was the commutative property of multiplication. Then I grouped the 4 times 5. That was using the associative property, again, of multiplication. And so make sure you're able to use those properties and name your properties. Your homework tonight is 2-1, page 71, 9 through 25. Make sure that you label your numbers as you go, and also as you're solving, name the properties like I was doing next to the problem as you solve it. I know that the idea is to do mental math, and that's for you in real life, but in math class, I want to see what you're doing step by step. Show me your thinking.